was always the Jags.
It was always the Jags. It was always the Jags.
Always the Jags.
Welcome into Always the Jags, where we talk all things Jaguars, all things Jacksonville, all things Duval. So the Texans game. Wow. That's all I can really say to that. Clearly, so Trevor Lawrence decided, so first of all, kudos to Trevor Lawrence for just showing up and playing, knowing that there's really nothing to play for anymore. And knowing that he's got to, protect his body and everything, and he still came out to play. I think that showed a lot to the players. Pete Prisco was the one who had the idea for Trevor to just shut it down for the season, go get the surgery and be done. And I still think at this point, I definitely think he should go get the surgery and be done. But kudos to him for coming in, being like, no, this is our home crowd. I want to come play, against the Houston Texans. And, I hate to say that decision bit him, but I don't think the team sees it that way, So, we'll dive right into the game. We lost to the Texans 23-20. And of course, what everyone is discussing is the late hit from Azeez Al-Shaair on Trevor Lawrence as he was going for a slide. Of course, this naturally erupted into a brawl, which, again, if you follow any pundit or anyone, they were saying two things. First of all, how could it not erupt into a brawl? And second of all, kudos on Evan Ingram and every other player who stood up for their quarterback and not going to let him get pushed around like that. I think most people would say, like, Jerry and Jones got thrown out, and I think that'll be the only ejection that Doug Peterson will be like, good job. I don't know how Doug Peterson responds to this, honestly, because he's, like 1 foot out the door, about to be fired. So it's hard to be mad at a player for sticking up to your quarterback, because that was an egregious late hit. And there's a little bit of controversy over it, because it looked like the problem is when you look at the play, Trevor is clearly bending down for a slide. And when Trevor goes down to slide, Azeez Al-Shaair lowers with him. Right? And so they lower at the same time. And so it's like, what are you doing? Why are you lowering your body while Trevor is clearly going into a slide, lowering his body? Right? Like, at that moment, if you see him lower, there's no reason for you to lower. It looked like you were lowering to hit him, even though he would try to hit him before he slid, right? And instead of going over the top of him. And I guess it's because, Patrick Mahomes and guys like that will do like a fake slide or something like that. All I can say is, I don't know if he did it on purpose, right? That's the one thing I can't assess. I can't assess if he was like, you know what? Trevor's going down for a slide here. I'm going to pop him just to let him know how it feels. Like, I'm going to give him a little something. I don't think that was his intention, right? But whether that was his intention or not, if he thought Trevor was fake sliding, he still ended up hitting a defenseless player, right? Because Trevor's going for a slide and he hit him. It is a defenseless player. So, and you could tell by the way Trevor's head hit the back of the turf, gave him a concussion, looked horrible. Evan Ingram came over and started throwing hands with him. And again, I do not condone violence, so I can't really comment on this because I can't condemn the action. I can't condone the actions, but I also can't condemn them because, if you see someone that you love or that you need to stick up for that gets harassed, like, you're going to step in, right, and intervene. So I will just leave it at that from my personal opinion. But also, like, that is what football players are supposed to do. It's a rough game. And if you don't have the back of your team, like, to me, that's what makes a team. If you don't have the contracts and everything aside, if you don't have the back of your team, who are you? And I think that's the best part about, being a professional, being able to step into an environment and join a team, because some of these guys will be on other teams next year, right? Like, and some of these guys were on other teams before. Like, Evan Ingram was a Giant for a long time. Now he's a Jaguar, right? And he acts like it and he plays like it and he defended Trevor like it. And I think that's all you can. I mean, that's one of the main things you want in a team. And I mean, the craziest part is Azeez Al-Shaair got suspended for 3 games. Without him in the game, the Texans defense was crumbling because that other linebacker who came in was not good in the run game. He couldn't get off blocks and he was bad in coverage. So we were kind of having a field day. And I'm like, how great would it have been to come back and win that game? After Trevor Lawrence gets knocked out, the whole team rallies around it and just goes for the win, right? And again, part of the issue was Jarrian Jones ended up throwing a punch, a rookie, which is really fiery for a rookie on defense, because usually like players get close, but like for a rookie on defense to get thrown out, for throwing a punch, it just shows how much Trevor really means to the team. So anyway, he ended up getting ejected. So that meant Darnell Savage had to come in and play nickel, which meant either Cisco or Johnson, I can't remember which one, came back in at safety. And again, they haven't been great back there all year. So it's not really surprising that Joe Mixon was kind of able to run all over everybody, because we didn't have our biggest thumpers back there at the safety spot or in the nickel spot. So, or we didn't, because our nickel spot was being played by Savage. So it creates a lot of issues, I guess, not just creates a lot of issues, but like I said, had we been able to win that game, honestly, Jaguars would have had a shot at the postseason. Had we rallied, whether Trevor stays out for the rest of the year or not, and it probably would have been a one and done. But like, you look at our remaining schedule, you look at if we beat the Texans, now we're tied for the head-to-head matchup, and you look at the Texans' schedule, coupled with the fact that Azeez Al-Shaair is out, and it's only possible because the Texans lost to the Titans the other week. Now, of course, we'd have to sweep the Titans, which would have been tough. We would have had to beat the Colts again, who are getting better, and we would have had to beat but I mean, the Jets and the Raiders don't look good. I mean, the Jets almost beat the Seahawks and then they choked. And I think by the time the Jets come to Jacksonville, they would have already punted on the season. And at this point now the Jaguars are punting on the season. But it's crazy to imagine it was that close, because the Texans, they have to face the Chiefs and the Ravens, as well as someone else next week, and I can't remember who it is. So that could easily be 3 losses in a row. Next thing you know, because right now the Jaguars were 2-10 now, and they previously were 2-9. The Texans, I believe, were 7-5 coming into the game. Let me check the scores here real quick. The Texans were, so now they're 8-5. So they were 7-5, right? So if the Texans lose, that makes them 7-6. And the Jaguars would have went to 3-9 if we won. And then that means if the Texans lose their next 3 games, if they lost against and who did the Texans play? Let's see here. The Texans would have lost to the Chiefs. No, sorry, that's not the one. They're not on a bye week either. Oh, Miami. So, without Azeez Al-Shaair, Texans easily could have lost to Miami because of their offense. So now the Texans would have been at, what did I say, 7-6. So now they're 7-7. Week 16, lose to the Chiefs. Now they're 7-8. Week 17, lose to the Ravens. Now they're 7-9. And 7-9, because we're the Ravens. Ravens right here. And then week 18, the Texans play Tennessee again. And I may be a tall task asking Tennessee to sweep the Texans twice. But if Tennessee beat them again in that game, that would have made them 7-10. And the Texans would have missed the postseason. I don't know how it would have worked if they went 8-9 and tied with us, I think based on strength of schedule, they still would have won. Um, but again, on paper, all the Jaguars' next games are winnable. It just would have had to start with this Texans game. Um, and when I say winnable, I mean like Mac Jones could have won them. That's how winnable I think that they are. But again, Jaguars have had so many, like it would be different if we had Christian Kirk available. We don't have Kirk or Davis because again, Gabe Davis hasn't been playing that well, but he's still another body on the field. He's still better than Austin Tremmel or um still better than Austin Tremmel or Tim Jones, right? Like effectively right now we're playing with two receivers, Parker Washington and Brian Thomas Jr. And why Press Taylor isn't using more two tight end sets? I don't know. When we've got Brenton Strange and Evan Ingram, don't ask me. I just make podcasts. So anyway, going all the way back to the Azeez Al-Shaair controversy, here's the part that hits me the most. I had a lot of respect for D'Amico Ryans. Nick Caserio, not so much. Don't really care about him. But as much as I hate the Texans, I had a lot of respect for D'Amico Ryans because what he was able to do with the organization, turn them around, of course, being a black coach, all of that stuff. He's got a lot of things stacked against him, and he still was able to go in and do a good job for the Texans organization and franchise. Um, a turnaround and rebuild that started in literally 1 year. But here's my issue on the game. And like I get like a coach kind of has to you got to defend your players, right? Um, and all coaches, need to defend their players. But he went a little too far. He essentially blamed Trevor Lawrence for the late hit. Because when reporters were asking him about it, he was like, "Oh, well, it's twofold, because sometimes the player, doesn't know if the quarterback's going for a late hit, and it doesn't know if he's going for a fake slide or like a late slide. He's like Trevor kind of slid late, so then he hit him, and he's like, to me, it wasn't egregious, He's like, and then he said like the Jaguars bench overreacted. I lost all respect for him in that moment. I just did. And especially if he had said that like during the game, I think that could have started another fight and they probably wouldn't have been able to they probably would have had to shut the game down. But it's like I would go up and ask him and be like, okay, there was one play where CJ Stroud was going out of bounds and Trayvon Walker was a step away from just laying him out. And it's like if Trayvon Walker had kept going, you mean to tell me the entire Texans bench wouldn't have erupted and attacked him? And in some ways, like after that comment, like I don't want anyone to get hurt, but I almost wish that Trayvon Walker gave him a little shove just to see. Because it's like you're going to criticize us for overreacting. One of your players egregiously hits ours, like you're expecting like your players wouldn't do the exact same thing. And he was a player, so he gets it. So he's been in those scraps before. So to say that our bench is overreacting is just essentially being like, well, my team is right because it's my team and that's the team that I'm on. So like they're the good guys in this situation. Um, and that's utterly ridiculous. And like I said, I had a lot of respect for him, and now I don't. And the Texans are going to be one and done in the playoffs. They haven't looked as good and I think that's the thing that kills me the most about this season is with how good the Texans were last year and how much it seemed like they loaded up with Danielle Hunter, Stephon Diggs, and all these pieces just coming together, and it seemed like Texans were going to make a deep run. And even though the Jaguars, like in 2022, people were thinking like, man, because the Jaguars were able to snatch the division from the Titans, we might have a stranglehold on this thing for years to come. And of course, that didn't end up happening in 2023, largely because of the emergence of CJ Stroud. And CJ Stroud hasn't been as good this year. His offensive line has him way sped up, and he's missing throws and things like that. Bryce Young has looked better over the past like 3 or 4 games than CJ Stroud has, which makes me very happy because I live in Charlotte. But anyway, so like we had a chance to take the division back this year because the Texans haven't been that good. They've not been that good. I mean, look at the games last year. They beat us 37-23. I mean, 37-13 last year. And this year, both games were one score games that came down to the final few plays. Um, and it's that kind of thing that's like we could have, yeah, we literally could have taken the division back. And we could have ended that, right? And now it's back to same old Jags, same old Jags, same old Jags. Um, so I think that's the part that frustrates me the most about this season. So many close games, so many close losses, and I'm not gonna say again because a lot of the issues were on our offense. So I'm not gonna say if we had Brian Florence other instead of Ryan Nielsen, we would have won more games. But I think we would have because I think Brian Flores would have been like Eric Armstead, I don't care how much money you make, you don't play defensive end well. You're going to play three technique because that's what you're best at. And that's how it's going to be. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would have been what happens there. So overall, it's like this was like the Texans aren't as, world beatery that we thought they were. And the sad part is like we are in no position to take advantage. And that's what hurts me the most about this season, about everything. That's what hurts me the most. We could not take advantage of a year when the Texans, look pedestrian, honestly. They look like a middle pack of the team. All we had to do is be above, like we didn't have to be a world beater, but if we had gotten to be above average, we could be competing with them for the division. If we had won two or three more games and then won this one, we'd be right in the thick of it, ready to snatch it away from them, especially with such a favorable schedule ahead. So I almost wish and maybe our schedule should have been um dispersed better. I don't know, because sometimes if you face all of your tough teams at the beginning, it can put you in a rut and then it's hard to kind of climb back out of and win some winnable games. And a lot of our tough games are at the beginning. I mean, again, not trying to make excuses, but how many teams faced four playoff teams from last year in their first 4 weeks? Only us. Dolphins, Browns, again, Browns haven't been good this year, but still. Dolphins, Browns, Bills, and Texans all made the playoffs last year. And we faced them in our first 4 weeks. And then how many people faced four more playoff teams for a gauntlet? Eagles, um, Eagles, Lions, Packers, and who else did we play? The Vikings won a playoff game, but they ended up being playoff team, but they ended up being really good this year. So we had some very tough games, right? Um, and the fact that we were in a position to win them says a lot. But the fact that we didn't win them also says a lot. So I guess next week we'll probably dive more into the draft. I ended up spending most of the time talking about Trevor Lawrence and all the controversy around Azeez Al-Shaair laying on that hit on Trevor Lawrence. So next week next week after we'll talk a little bit more about the draft and what we're looking for. Because again, if you look at our roster, if you just put our players in the best positions, it's not as devoid as we think. Like we have starters in almost every spot. I do really like the Walker Little extension. My thing is again, why the Jaguars have crafted this because we had rookie contracts are very, very valuable, right? And we've had a starting caliber left tackle ever since we drafted him. Like at least a year, maybe not his rookie year, but ever since he took over for Cam Robinson after he got hurt, which I think was 2020, it was 2022, we've had a starting caliber left tackle. And then when Cam Robinson got and I think they wanted him to play right tackle for they wanted Walker. I think they were going to have Walker Little play right tackle and have Juwan Taylor leave in free agency because Cam Robinson had already got the deal. Okay. But then Cam Robinson got himself suspended. So then we ended up drafting Anton Harrison. And because we needed another tackle because Cam Robinson wasn't going to be available. So we ended up drafting Anton Harrison, having him play right tackle and letting Walker Little back up Cam Robinson. And so again, it's like things like this that happen to the Jaguars. We end up wasting Walker Little's rookie contract because Cam Robinson ended up getting suspended. And we ended up drafting a right tackle. And it's one of those things that's like, Walker Little's a good player to me. To me, he's a at least average starting tackle, if not above average. But we could have had him for cheap. And we were paying Cam Robinson all this money while we had Walker Little, probably one of the best backup tackles in the league. And then now Cam Robinson is gone. And now Walker Little is going to be taking up about the same amount of cap space as Cam Robinson. Instead of freeing up cap space to have Walker Little on the team. Like that's what good teams do. They replace their aging veterans with rookies on rookie contracts, maybe give them a year to develop and then put them into the starting lineup. But it's like when you wait this long, now you gave him a deal to go start and be your left tackle, which is good because, that gives us some clarity on the situation going forward. But it's like, I honestly think if Cam Robinson didn't get suspended, we wouldn't have drafted Anton Harrison. I think we wouldn't have picked a tackle until a little bit later. I don't think we would have taken a first round tackle that would need to start day one, right? I don't think it was a bad move, but I think it was the move predicated by Cam Robinson's suspension. It's like these are the things that the Jaguars that's what happens to us, right? Like that's just the way that it seems to go. Yeah, so I guess that's it for my little rant. And at the beginning of 2023, at the end of last year, I don't know if I would have let Cam Robinson go based upon the way that our run game was going, but if it meant bringing in a better cornerback or something like that, I would have released Cam Robinson before the season even started. And I don't even think we got much from him from the Vikings. I mean, he made a good trade chip, but again, it's like we can't even get 1 year of two rookie contract tackles. It's just it feels like mismanagement, and I don't know what you end up doing about it. But I'm sure Shad Khan has some decisions to make in the offseason. So thank you for joining us. Again, remember, it was always the Jags, even though it's not really currently. But tune in next week. Thank you guys so much for listening.